Andre, the CEO and apparition seer, also studying telekinesis, which is the ability to move objects with the mind. He has multiple abilities since he was a child. He has experiences with the supernatural, but never afraid to call them out. Siobhan, the soul bringer and psychic medium. She speaks to spirits and she is a clairvoyant. Her connection guides us through our investigations. Watch as she investigates with the team for 2 or 3 nights at haunted locations. Leroy the Demon Hunter, also known as the Warrior of Light, fearless vanquisher of dark demonic entities. Watch as he fights demons by calling the universe for help and using his abilities. Shantez the cameraman. Watch as he films the action in different haunted locations. Things can get very intense during our investigations. Meet Matt, our second cameraman. Watch as he films our reality in different haunted locations. Together we are Paranormal Trilogy, a team with different abilities from Reno, Nevada. This is Phasmo Network. All new episodes coming this fall. Subscribe today.
Paranormal Trilogy with Goldfield Network, and we're taking a tour at the Goldfield Hotel. All the way to the top.
I know, we are at high elevation and then those stairs are huge rats. So we'll stop here, catch our breath for a minute. Got our cardio workout in first. Yeah. So it's all downhill after that. Anyway, so while we're standing here catching our breath for a minute, I'll give you some history on the hotel. So prior to the Goldfield Hotel, there's another hotel just right down over here. And it had burned to the ground 2 different times. So when they built this, they had the idea of making it more fire safe. So they built it out of rock and iron and things that were less likely to burn easily. The newspapers at one point had called it a fireproof building. Obviously that's not real, but it's a lot safer than the little wood building they had been putting up before that. You will also see, besides the building structure itself, there's also those iron grates that are outside that look like little balconies, and those are the fire escapes. So if something happened, climb out the window and down the ladder to your safety. I'll show you another fire safety feature when we cruise around. But so this building was complete and opened in January of 1908. If you go to Tonopah, there's the Mizpah and the Velvada in Tonopah. If you look at the buildings, all 3 of them are very similarly designed. And that's because they were all the same architectural firm. They were Curtis and Holsworth. They were out of Reno. They came down and started the Velvada, which originally was a bank, 1906. Then the Mizpah in 1907, and this one in 1908. Everybody who's had anything to do with this hotel since it opened, the next people came in and rearranged the room layouts. Almost every single room you see is not original room layouts. I'll show you what I mean by original room layout when we get to one, but for the most part, they've all been changed. It started off with 152 rooms that were designed to be rented out to customers or visitors or whatever. It was a very high-end hotel. It was very modern and very fancy. It was intended for those who were involved with the well-to-do side of mining. So mostly investors and people that had quite a bit of money in general. It was designed with modern amenities at the time, and that included hot and cold running water in every room. That to them was a modern amenity. I personally would be unhappy if I didn't have hot and cold running water in my room if I checked into a hotel, but that's because we take a lot of things for granted. But they also had their own restrooms in almost every room. They had their own telephones in almost every room. So you were able to communicate. Most likely they were calling back east to other parts of their mining company or group or ownership or what have you. So it was considered to be very fancy. It continued to operate as a high-end hotel for many years. When the Great Depression came along, by then, they believed that they were running out of gold in the area. We now know that that is not true. Today's world, they're actually operating some of these little old mines that are out there because of the simple fact that they have things like microscopic gold today. They didn't know anything about microscopic gold. They were throwing things out that quite often had gold, but it would be microscopic. So they are finding some gold in some of these old tailings and some of these old little mines. But that being said, the town was declining. They thought they were running out of gold, so people were moving on to other places and other locations, either to different mining camps or different job locations in general. And the town not only was dwindling down, but so was the hotel. And it kind of became a flop house for wayward miners and cowboys and things like that. So people that are kind of transient workers, come get a paycheck and leave again type of people. And then World War II came along, and out here at the Tonopah Airport, they had the Army Air Base. The Air Force had not been developed yet, so the Army Airmen were doing what today's world would probably be Air Force jobs. And they were learning flight maneuvers for going into the war. They were learning bombing techniques and trying out new bombs and testing new bombs and building new bombs out there. One of the bombs they built out at the airport was actually the first heat-seeking missiles. They actually were building those out here at the Tonopah Airport, and they were learning how to do stuff like that. However, when the Army Airmen came out here, they would often bring their family, and they had nowhere to put their families up. So they rented out the entire Goldfield Hotel. The ladies of that era were quite unhappy and complained about the hotel because it was not up to its grandeur and glory that it used to be, as well as the elevator was stuck here on the top floor, just like it is right now. And so this elevator has been stuck up here for quite some time. So these ladies were having to walk up the stairs, and they were quite unhappy about that. If you think about it, you probably had a little one in your arms and another one hanging on to your hand or your leg or something, and climbing all those stairs, and heaven forbid you had groceries or anything else with you, so it was probably a chore, and I would be unhappy too, I would imagine. But so the last families who checked out, moved out of the hotel at the end of their time out here, the last time they did that, they locked the doors behind them, and that was the last time it was actually used as a room-to-rent facility. That being said, there's been a lot of different people who've tried to live here, work here. In the 1980s, a man was purchasing the building. He had crews in here that were working, and the first crews went to the boss and said, boss, we're done. We're not coming back. The second crew he got in here was working, and they seemed to be doing quite well, until one day somebody said, hey, I forgot something, let me run in and grab it. He ran in, he turned around and ran right back out. He ran out and he told his crew, I'm never going back there again. He says, when I ran inside, there was a full bar with music and smoke and people, and they looked at me, and I am never going back. And his crew said, yeah, we're with you, bro. They never came back. That man's company went bankrupt, and he was never able to complete. A lot of things that you will see throughout this building are from the 80s, including some bathtubs. Like back there is a good example of those plastic plastic tub inserts.
Oh, yeah.
So they're brand new, but they're from the 80s, so they're not brand new, but they've never been actually used. There's different things like that you'll see as you cruise around that are very retro 80s and stuff like that.
Okay.
But the building is very large. It's in a U shape. This is 180 feet, and then each wing is 100. So it goes around in a U, and it's a very good sized building. We'll start by going down here first, and then we'll come back around and go that way. You'll see what looks like cinder block partial rooms or buildings down here. I think those were walk-in coolers for a restaurant. Anything you see that is cinder block is going to be the 80s. If it's the red brick, it's original, except for where they're replacing them. Or the cinder block is the 80s. There's also a cinder block tower connected to the building, and that was the elevator they put in the 1980s. And I just wanted you guys to get your cardio in, so, no, I'm kidding. And that elevator is actually stuck in the basement, as the old one is stuck up here.
Oh, wow.
No happy mediums. We're up or we're down, that's all. If you look out the other window over here, you'll see another cinder block building, and that is also from the 80s. And he was going to make that like a boiler room and probably fire escapes, as well as, you can see where he was going to extend the hallways over to that building. And I'm sure it would have included, like, you know, the housekeeping services or maintenance services or anything like that and such. So when I was telling you that everybody has rearranged the room layouts, right over here is one of my favorite prime examples. So they sealed off that door in the 80s.
Okay.
Moved it over a foot and did the same thing. Couldn't we work with this one? I mean, that's kind of a waste of energy, resources, etc. in my opinion. Couldn't you have just worked that out to work? Yeah, boardroom? I don't understand, but whatever. Not my deal. It just kind of seems weird to me why we had to move the door over. But okay. So we'll go ahead and go around to the other side.
Show you guys that we're at the Goldfield Hotel. That's me right there. On the front room.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. Long hallway.
I'll bring you over to this room first. It's starting to go down a bit, but don't do it. Well, other people bring their dogs here to work here, and so he sometimes has to remark his territory to make sure that, I'm like, dude, you're not missing in the building, I'm not having it. So anyway, one of the reasons I come up here to this particular room is the view up here. I mean, if you look out across the countryside and all the mountain ranges you can see and all of the area around us that you can see, it's just really spectacular. We should have got up here actually for sunset, but we didn't make it. But
I think you can see the place where we're at.
probably you can see all over the place up here. It's a really great view. But when you look out across the hills back here, you'll see some of the head frames and stuff from some of the old mines that were in existence back then. And those are some of the mines that are starting to rework again. And yeah, so you can see those head frames or those A-frames that are up there. And those are the head frames for the different mines. You have to realize there was head frames like that everywhere, all the way around up here. I always just stand up here and imagine what it would have been like, say, 1910. When you got here, if you had this room, you'd be like, see that mine? That's my mine. See those guys over there working for me. And they're, you just be thinking you were a baller by then. You'd be like, oh yeah, this is the money, honey. This is where it comes in. But if you look out here, though, the large building straight across from us there, that was a bank building at one time. Okay. The long, skinny building to the right of that building was the theater. Okay. Yeah. And you kind of can see down to the courthouse. I don't know if you've noticed the courthouse down there, the sheriff's office they have down there. And it looks like a castle. It's got the turrets on the top and stuff like that, which are pretty cool. Yeah. In actuality, Highway 95 down here below us is actually on what they call Crook Street. And they put their sheriff's office on Crook Street. I don't know. I think it's funny. I think it's very funny. But who's really the crook? Who's the crook here, honestly? You have to question it. But anyway, so this room up here is really great views. All the main reason I brought it up here. This hallway here is what I call the gunslinger hallway, or the cowboy shootout hallway. So there were two cowboys that had a disagreement earlier in the day, and they settled it up here on this floor. And I believe both were killed. But the gunslinger is the one that hangs out up here the most. Okay. And the gunslinger, if you offend him, he will let you know, and not in a very nice way.
Oh, no.
At one point, when I first started doing the tours, I'd been told some misinformation, and I was telling this misinformation, and I would get up here, and all the voice boxes and apps and everything would say, liar, imbecile, a moron, lies, and I'm like, okay, well, if it's lies, then tell me the truth, and nobody would ever tell me anything. So then one day I was doing an investigation, and me and this other guy came walking up this hallway, and as we did, I stopped breathing, and it felt like somebody was choking me. Okay. I'm not the only person that has had that happen to them up here. We have an agreement, I think we have an agreement anyway, you never know, he might change his mind, but he and I have an agreement that we don't lay hands on each other. Nobody is allowed to choke or be mean to others, and so I later on, it scared me. I stopped breathing, I stopped against the wall and couldn't say anything and everything, and it was pretty, I didn't know if I was coming back after that. He actually scared me pretty good, and I wouldn't have believed it if I had seen somebody else do it. I'd been like, right. But when it happens to you, it changes your whole ball game. Okay. And I came up here later on, and I sat down here in the hallway, and he was a man who liked to play cards, so I played cards, and he would, through the voice app, he would say the card before I turned it over and things like that. Wow. So,
that's Cody.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. When you're playing actual physical cards, it's not like the phone sees what I'm playing, Right. So you can debunk any of that stuff. But so, needless to say that after that, we started communicating, and I said, look, you be nice to me, and I'll be nice to you, and everything like that. And he's been very nice lately. But he definitely follows me around. Usually it's when I've been up here that he will follow me around. And at first I thought it was just me thinking, maybe he's following me around. Until I had other people that would be like behind me. They're like, I swear there's a man that's walking behind us. And he's a big, tall man. I said, yeah, he probably is. And I've had so many other people say, I swear there's a man right behind us. Or I feel like there's a man right behind you. And so many people have said different things like that to me that that I'm like, okay, it's not just me that thinks that, you know, I'm not the one that overthought that. I'm like, oh yeah, he's following me now, you know. No, other people see that too, or feel that too, so he quite often will. And I appreciate it, because I think he's actually kind of watching out for me now that we're a little better friends now. We're friends now. They say that there's a man that sits in a chair like right here that holds they think he's holding like a shotgun or something. It looks like he's in like a wife beater or what have you. I don't know, he just stares. He just watches the halls and stares and kind of glares, but I don't know if I've had anything with him. There's a lady up here that they say she's in a full red dress and carries a candle. I don't know that I've had any experience with her, but I do know that more than one person, especially male people, will have a woman's voice say their name, and when they get to the area it sounds like she's calling their name, then a male voice says, kill them. So if your name gets called, I would recommend you don't go by yourself to that room or to where she's at, because I've never seen her. I'd like to have more experiences with her. It would be great, but so far nothing's happened with me and her, and just the gunslinger and I. So we'll go ahead. We'll go down here. This is the hallway where my dog started growling down the hallway. He was looking down this way. We looked down this way, and we were all super quiet. We were sitting on the floor, so we weren't moving, and he started to growl, and he wouldn't stop growling down the hallway. So, when we get down here, we have cinder block again. So we're back to the 80s, baby. Okay. And so I don't know if this was the back stairwell. Hey, wait for me. If this was the back stairwell before, or if it was made into a stairwell in the 80s. You'll see when we go down, look down here, that this is a concrete stairwell. It goes all the way to the basement. Okay. And all the stairs end in the middle of the window. I don't know if it was like, hey, you owe me some money, come help me upstairs, and whoop, out the window you went, or if it was because the fire escapes are out there and it would still be usable, or maybe he was going to seal them up and we'd have never known the difference. It's hard to say. Right. But we'll go to the floor below us on this stairwell. Oh, you see she's standing right there at the window? Yeah. There's that window. So this is the floor that they are currently working on. So they do work on the building during the week. So there's areas here, obviously you watch out for the cords that might be strung across. There's also random things like this that you could trip over or what have you. So I kind of recommend that you kind of stay away from those locations. You'll see where they're working. You can tell in the rooms and stuff like that. Okay. This is also one of the floors that I see the most graffiti from the 1980s, and I'll point some of that out to you as well. But I'm going to tell you guys a quick funny story. So right up the road here is a group that's called 01. They're actually out of Las Vegas, and they have side-by-sides. You can pay, you come up, you stay the weekend, and they take you out in the desert, teach you how to drive in the desert on a side-by-side, and take you out exploring in the desert on a side-by-side. Really cool deal. They have like some tiny homes up there that you stay in and everything like that. They usually have a pretty good sized group that comes up, especially in the summertime. And I had done a tour, just a quick tour, and I went across the street to visit over there for a little bit, and there was a group of those people from 01 that were getting ready to go home in the morning, so they were done doing their side-by-side thing and everything. And they were drinking in there, and they were having a good time, and they were just blah, 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 blah. And so I was talking to the one gal, and she's like, oh, you do the tours, can we go on a tour right now, please? I'll get all those people to go with us. Come on, please. And I'm like, okay, fine, you know. And she rounds up all her little drunk friends, and we were doing the tour, and they're all laughing and joking and loud and just blah 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 blah, drunk people, you know. And so we were doing just like we did now. Like we went to the top floor, we came down these stairs. What we did, I stopped right here in front of this door. And this other guy that was drunk that was standing here with me, he was standing like right here, kind of like where Blanco is almost. And And when we stopped here, everybody else is still up there, blah, 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 you know, and right behind my head was knock, knock, knock. Somebody knocked on this door right behind me. And this drunk guy, which is super funny, he goes, oh, did you hear that? Something knocked right behind your head. I said, and I don't know what to say at that point. I'm like, yep, I did hear that. And he's like, why? It's partially drunk people, I know this. They go, oh. And he goes, and he creeps around the corner here, and he gets to the other side of this wall, and he goes, there's no fucking door! There's no fucking door! And I really paid attention and looked around that big door. There's no door on that side. You would have to have known there was a door here to knock behind my head. Oh my God. Yeah. So that was pretty weird. That's pretty funny. That was funny, but it was weird. Yeah. And then so him and I are both kind of like, okay. Oh. Yeah. Oh. And then so of course now he wants to tell his friends who have missed all of this. Nobody else has seen this but him and I. And he's like, you guys, there's no fucking door. They're like, no, there's no doors. I don't see the doors. And he's like, no, something was, you guys are not listening. Oh my God. And he was ripping. It was so funny, just because his drunk reaction of like, and then he's like, there's no fucking door. And when he tried to tell them, all he could get out was, there's no fucking door. And they were like, shut up, dude. You know, they didn't know what the hell he was talking about. But we're going to get down this hallway here. And so there's random things in this hallway that, like I said, are graffiti from the 80s, like stuff like that. I don't know what that means. Then we have Roger Mummy, 22288. I do know Roger. Roger's last name is not Mummy. But he did work at the building, so there's that. Bill the Cat. And that was a common thing that Roger drew often. But then we get to the random quotes, and that's, remember Robo Warrior, no mercy. Oh no. Then, to be afraid of somebody is to be meek. To be meek is to be a nobody. To be a nobody is to not exist. Oh my gosh. I found out later that's a Houdini quote. Which kind of makes me go, okay, that's a little weird. Same handwriting, same stupid pen. This is just a moment in your life. Sounds really me. I'll grow up to be a warrior. Same handwriting and pen. Don't ever let somebody hold your job over your head. You don't need a robo-warrior. Okay, so now we have problems with authority. But when you think about these random weird quotes down this particular hallway, then at the end down here in pencil and cursive, blue dress with tiny flowers. And that's where there would be nobody here in a blue dress with tiny flowers in the 80s working around these construction guys and all kind of strange. When you consider that these guys left the building and never came back at one point. So, right. And then, of course, there's authority written there on the wall. So, for people that never came back to the building, that's kind of weird little random quote. They also did things like Egyptian kayak, which they spelled wrong. This is Louis. What happens with drugs? Oh my God. And then, one of my favorite things in the entire hotel are the old phone lines. So, those were all hand-run. If you look at the wood behind those wires, you'll see the room numbers that they were going to service back there, too. So that's pretty cool. We're so mobile and wireless today's world that I just think that is fantastic. You know, the poor journeyman was the one running all those wires and lines through there, braiding them together, wired them together. Had hand job all the way around, you know, it's just hand done. Yeah. So I just think that's super awesome. I love it. Super. I think it should have glass over it, social area. Same with the floor above us, there was same thing, same setup, there's a social area, and you could go out onto the balcony that was up there also. But this particular balcony was close enough to the ground level that they used it for different public announcements and even campaign speeches for different offices and things like that. And they say that there was even a president who came up here to do a campaign speech. He did his speech out here on the balcony, and when he left, they found out he was a stand-in who doubled for the campaign. But that's okay, because you're assassinating, you know, whatever. And I believe it was Theodore Roosevelt who was up here. I believe the man in the 80s was making this a suite, hence the jacuzzi bathtub back here, and it's never been used. The bathroom setup in general is very late 80s, early 90s style. It reminds me of every cocaine 80s movie I've ever seen in my life, really. I expect a naked woman with cocaine or something on it. It just kind of reminds me of like that movie 12 or something like that. But yeah, just total 80s style stuff right there, you know? 80s, early 90s-ish. But we're going to go ahead and go into this other room. He also opened that up in the 80s. Watch your step. There's a 2x4 across it. Are you coming with me? Okay. There's a 2x4 here. Don't trip over it. Okay. 2x4. Careful. I just tripped over it. I'm like, shit. Everybody does it. Yeah. So this room and the room next door are the two rooms that I think are pretty close to original room layouts. Okay. Everybody says, well, it's not a very big room. And I said, well, if you think about it, though, they didn't have king-size beds or two big queens. They didn't have this large, huge room to check into. They probably had a full-size bed, a desk with a phone, your own bathroom, and this would have been a good room setup. Most likely, a single male would be staying here, sometimes women too. But the room next door is a little bit bigger, but it still is very basic room. When you look at the hallway here, it's like this little offshoot hallway that the room doors be off at. And I believe that that's had a couple different purposes. But the main one was probably safety and security. So if you're staying in this room and I'm staying in that room, anybody else down this hallway is probably looking for trouble. Back then there was enough money coming through this area, they had their own stock exchange building next door. So you know that the people that were staying here had a lot of money. It would be real tempting for someone who didn't to come up here and want to kick their door in or do something bad. So I believe that's just a safety situation. Plus, you know, in a nice, fine hotel, it makes you feel a little more private or secluded because you're not on the main walkway floor there. People aren't walking by your room door all the time. Right. And again, kind of comes down to safety for that as well, because not only are people not walking by your room all the time, anybody else come down here isn't supposed to be down here. So it makes you feel a little more privacy.
Or wood is kind of shaped like this, right? Mm-hmm. Like a house?
Yeah, it is kind of shaped like this. Anyway, so we're going to go down this little hallway here. I would fall over and break my neck. You know, and literally, they say that did happen to one girl. She was having a struggle, and the man dropped her over the ledge basically and broke her neck. But back then, that was a death certificate basically. If you broke your neck or your back, you were done. You know, in today's world, you'll be all right most of the time. So when you came to the Goldfield Hotel back in its grandeur, back in its glory, you probably did like they do today. You check in, you do stuff upstairs, and hey baby, are you hungry? You want to come downstairs? Go downstairs and have a bite to eat. Yeah, I'd love to go have some dinner. Men were expected to go to the saloon and socialize with other men. It was an almost expectation. was almost considered rude not to. Women were not allowed in the saloon and would have to enter the dining area through this separate hallway. Yeah, get excited and not with the dog. We're getting excited. Watch out for the wires. Okay. As you can see, most are cut and not functional, but that doesn't mean I want to run into everything. So as a proper woman, to come down this hallway and get a drink with dinner, you'd have to knock on this little window. The bartender had time, he'd open the window, ask you what you wanted. If your husband was on the other side and said she doesn't need a drink, you didn't get one. I wouldn't have survived. I would have probably been Calamity Jane style with a pair of pants and boots and a bullwhipping on the other side in the men's bar going, I'll take a drink. And I don't think I would have survived the whole thing. Nah, not happening. This is the Palm Grill and the palm trees or palm themed room. It was the dining room. This is the swinging doors into the kitchen where the food out. Over there is the concrete stairwell looking down where the top floor down is the cook. And so then around here, you notice the tiles of the grill. They call it the grill. This is part of the gentleman's saloon bar here. Over here is this window with the bar top of the saloon. And this is where the saloon is located. When we were upstairs, I was telling you about the wire and upstairs you'll see spigots like this on the wall on each end of the hallway. And then there's a piece of wood. This is the only place the fire hose is actually still located. But this little fire hose, if you had a fire in your room, you hook that up, turn it on, and run it down to your room and put the fire out so it didn't engulf other rooms or other parts of the hotel. So kind of like seeing a fire extinguisher in the hallway when you check in somewhere or something. But they would have one on each end of the hallway upstairs on all floors. This over here, that's the window I was telling you about. These are a couple of drains here. We don't know what the name or something. But this is the top of the gentleman's saloon. So these pieces would have gone across the top up here, and then the bar top and the unit side over here. These are all lions' heads, and they would have had light holes in their mouth. Oh. Yeah, it would have been very cool. Kind of creepy, kind of cool. I don't know, there's something about it I wanted to be cool so bad, and I just think, man, that's kind of crazy almost. I don't know what it is about thinking about those yellow lights, and I don't know, I just thought, yeah, so I think it's weird, in a way. This was the stairwell that went down to the basement, that we no longer can access. Oh, okay. Wow. So one of the reasons we come in here is I like to show you this sign. This is a man in the 1980s, obviously. He was planning on opening in January of '88. The original opening was January of '08. Would have been very awesome had he been able to succeed. Too bad his company went bankrupt. But another reason I bring you into this particular room is to talk to you about this rock wall over here. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're like spaced out for a minute, huh? But, so this rock, when you look at it, encompasses the entire basement and the main floor that we're on now. And after that, then the building goes to brick all the way up. When you look at the building from the outside, you'll see some of this rock, but you'll also see some white rock. That white rock was from a local quarry, but this rock was all brought in from Rockland, California. When you look at it every now and then, you'll see like a little glitter, sparkle thing. That's mica that is in the rock, and you can see that there's like a coating over this. There was like stuff over it that they had to tear off and so forth. When you look at the grout between the rocks, you'll notice that it looks fairly new. That's because it is. That's exactly what they're still doing up on the third floor today, is they're replacing all the grout and mortar between the rocks And all by hand. I literally was part of this project. I was down this particular hallway, standing on a 10-foot ladder with a bag of concrete on my shoulder, squeezing concrete in between these rocks. And when I say smoothing it down by hand, you look closely, you'll see somebody's hand marks, that finger marks. Oh yeah, it's smooth down through here. Literally, it's all done by hand. We would chisel it out, wipe it out, brush it out with a little broom, and then we fill in the concrete by squeezing a bag of concrete in it. So it's a hell of a job. But it has saved this building. There were places you could see all the way outside. So it has completely saved the building in many, many ways. This was also a saloon where ladies of the evening could socialize with gentlemen, and down the hallway is where the ladies of the evening were at. So nobody ever comes to the Goldfield Hotel without hearing or reading something about room 109 and the Elizabeth room. That's where we're at now, is the Elizabeth room. So there are two different stories that go, they're basically the same story, but two different stories of the event or situation. And there's no evidence of either one. We don't know how true they are or not, but in the end, there's something in this room that has to do with tragedy. It involves a woman and a baby or a very small child or something along those lines. So I'll tell you the first story and then the second story. They basically go exactly the same. It's just kind of two different people in the situation. So there was a man living at the hotel. He was working at the hotel, living here as well. He had a daughter who was a young lady, and she was having a relationship with an older gentleman who also worked here in the building. Her father did not approve of this relationship, for one, because he was a much older man, and for two, he didn't approve of his daughter doing these things. And so she got pregnant. And when she started to show, she had to confess to her dad that she was pregnant. And he was furious. He chained her to the radiator heater located here, where she remained until she gave birth to the baby, at which time they threw it down a mine shaft or else under the stairwell. And she bled to death 3 days later.
Oh my God.
Again, there's no evidence of this. However, why would you tell anybody that you killed your daughter?
Right.
The odds are that the baby was malnutrition, probably premature, probably wasn't going to live. However, they made sure of that by chaining her to a radiator heater here.
Right.
So the Elizabeth story is very much the same, except that she was a working girl. She was very well known with George Wingfield. George Wingfield was one of the owners of the hotel at the time, also one of the owners of the largest mining company out west, which is the Goldfield Consolidated Mining Company. He was a married man, and so she got, Miss Elizabeth was then found to be pregnant when she had started to show, she had to confess. Being furious at her, the owners and madam and so forth chained her to the radiator heater, same scenario. Baby got thrown away essentially, and she within 3 days bleeding to death. So we don't, again, you wouldn't have any record of that happening due to the fact that the women that did that job were considered scorned women. They were also property. You could do with your property as you pleased, as well as nobody would miss them. They were not somebody that society would have worried about. So you have a dead hooker. So nobody would care or prosecuted or anything else. So it would have all just been blown under the rug. So you think about either one of those scenarios, and stories are very sad, tragic, and would have never been reported anyway. You know, so it is how it is with that time frame for sure. Like I said, I can't prove it, and I don't know how much of it is legitimate. However, I do know that what I've experienced in this room, and what other people have experienced in this room, and I have witnessed even, there's something in this area and in this room that is tied to a woman and a baby or something like that. And it's very tragic and sad. There's also, I think that this was like if you were in trouble, like maybe at work or something, they would put you down here for an undisclosed amount of time and keep you basically in that little section. Yeah, in that little area you were, and back then they could, you were kind of property once you worked for a place, and that was just that, and you were treated like crap. If you were not, if you weren't doing everything perfect. But also in this hallway over here, there's this male, dark, shadowy figure. He usually darts between the rooms and stuff like that. If you go down to the end of the hallway here and turn off all the lights and everything and just look down this hallway, you'll start to see, he'll show up. Almost every time. I've only had him not show up a couple times. And there was a man who worked here in the building, and I believe his name was Jesse what? Anyway, he had come from somewhere back east, something, and he was out here working. He was living in the hotel, and they say that whatever had happened to him prior times was starting to catch up with him here, and maybe he was going to be found by somebody or something like that. And he killed himself. He shot himself in his room down here. So there is a room upstairs that there was a man that fell in love with the lady of the evening, and to quote the graveyard Dre, you can't make a whole housewife. So, yeah, so there's that, and he couldn't keep her, and he was unhappy, and he jumped out the window. There was another man upstairs who had, we don't know why or how, became penniless. He was absolutely 100% broke. They were going to end up throwing him out of his hotel room, so he owned himself in the room. There was a lady of the evening, kind of the opposite scenario, where she was hoping to become the wife, and she too jumped to her death. So there's been some suicides in this building. What do you got? Is there a moth or something? Is it a spider or a moth? Get it. What is it? She's like, I don't know. What is it? Where are you going to go? You got to protect me from those things, you gotta get the bugs too. Anyway, so that is this end of the building. Come here. I want you to walk nicely with me. No, drive me around. So like I said, this hallway here, you go down there. Okay. Yeah, so I just like to point that out just to everybody. It's something cool to look at, which is a cool thing.
How much do you think this safe would be worth back then?
Oh gosh, I don't know. A lot. Because it's a good, big, heavy safe. It's unreal, but that doesn't mean it's easy to move. Even empty, it's a little bit. The doors are removable, so I assume they brought it in with no doors. Right. The doors on and stuff like that. I mean, like, it is old school heavy. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool though. From here, then I will, back here is where the kitchen was located. you know, you don't want to disturb anything like that.
Okay.
The words that comes to my mind is scores. So, we'll go down here. There is a rise in the coffee here, and I usually just every These are my examples. You can also see it back there, it's being damp and such. So I don't want you to disturb anything like that. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
But this is the elevator works for the old elevator, which are really cool to check out. If you want to check that out, you're welcome to do so. Just kind of do it from over here rather than in there. You know,
Gotcha.
just because it's that way. Same with back here. This is not a good working area. It is a working area, but also if the water is going to come in at all, it comes in these two places.
Got it.
And even though it's not raining out or anything, but I just don't want to risk any of the moisture. Okay. You can see the 4x4 and the wheel there for the elevator. So you can see that it can't move.
Right.
However, if that 4x4 were to move out of there, I'm sure that whole thing would come flying to the ground.
no.
And it would probably explode the whole building, essentially. It would be a big, heavy box flying out of the air, basically.
Oh my God.
Down here in the basement, originally it was actually a barber shop. So ladies were not allowed in a bar. They sure as hell not allowed in the barber shop. This was the cigar room, though. If you were down here getting your hair cut and a shave or what have you, and you knew someone of somewhat prominence, you could be invited to the cigar room and have a cigar. Sometimes you can still smell the cigar smell in the wood when you stand in there. If you go in there, it's like, oh, that's cigar smoke, you know, it's still ingrained in the wood. But you can see the split door, and so that, you know, they could open the door and be like, what do you want? Go away, you know. I'm going to show you this wall down here. Please don't touch the wall. You can take pictures, you can read it, you can get up close to it, but it is crumbling like this is.
Got it.
So we don't want it to crumble anymore. But when they were down here working, they discovered a whole bunch of history here. So there's Belmont News and Outside Mail, 9 a.m. These are letters from the Allied Promotions Bureau, which I didn't know was a thing. And they're pretty funny if you get a chance to either read the first couple paragraphs or take a picture, read it. They're a trip. There's a picture of some lady driving a car. I don't know whose car or whose lady. There's maps. There's somebody's forehead. There's newspaper clippings. One of my favorite quotes in the whole world is on this wall, and that is, work like Helen, the name Helen, be happy. Work like Helen, be happy. God bless America. Work like Helen, be happy. Quit being Karen and go to work. There's different things. Like I said, you're welcome to check it out, read it, everything. Those letters crack me up because they talk about how, like one of them is about how young men should not talk to their boss or their upper management people or anybody in a negative tone or talk back in any way, and that if they act like that, they should not be here working, type of thing. There's another one that you know, if you have to also be firm with your employees, but praise them at times too. You have to give them, encourage them to be good employees too. So it's kind of that's the gist of those two letters, but they are not stated in such a fashion, and definitely I would be offended if you posted those at my job. In today's world, I will not be referred to like those things. Let's go this way. Hey, you are going the wrong way, buddy. You're going the wrong way. You gotta go that way. Thank you. I believe that a lot of that area was the main part of the barber shop when you look at the tile floor and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
This is that hallway here, and again, it's blocked off for a reason, so stay out of that hallway area. Okay. And that whole section is just, it's just not great. So we'll go ahead and go in this room for a second. So there was a manager or an owner or whatever at one time. He called up all the newspapers in the area, and he said, I want you to come down and write this article. I want you to write an article about the Goldfield Hotel because I'm going to build a mine under the Goldfield Hotel. And they came down to write his statements in the paper. And it was all a bullshit story, to say the least. So there was already a mine attached to the back part of the building back then. It's still there, but they have it sealed off. You can't go over there. And they would have no reason to build a second mine under the hotel. That would be dumb. Plus, you have people upstairs and fine dining and fine clothing and leather and velvet furniture and all that dust and all that dirt has to go out the elevator. That's not going to be okay. Yeah. Now you're going to tie up your elevator for your customers. That's also not going to be okay. Right. You're having dinner upstairs and there's mining dirt floating around and that's not going to be good. And when you wear your fanciest clothes here, and it should all be bad. Yeah. But, so he had to come down and write this, please write this newspaper article. So then he called them back shortly, not long later, and he said, so I want you to let everybody know that they were dry holes or of no value in there. Because it was never really going to be a mine. Right. He did build a tunnel, however, under the highway here, over to the buildings across the way, because that way the local gentlemen who were down here getting a haircut could just slip on over to a brothel.
It's always that story with the tunnel.
It is, and it's very common in little mining towns like this, for all over the country, really. It was a common to have secret tunnels and things, you know. Yeah. So it is obviously sealed off today with concrete and everything. There's a concrete block across the middle there. Right. They should ever need to run utilities from the street side in. That's about an 8-foot drop though, and if you notice there is water in there, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, there is water in there. They were pumping the water out, but there's still water in there some. You see where the water line goes halfway up?
Oh yeah.
So again, reiterate about the sections that are blocked up. If you notice that the footing around that area has holes in it in the footing, so that if there should be a flood, you can drain it that way and pump it out and so forth. That's what I mean by stay away from some of these little areas. I mean, coming in here, as long as you kind of just careful with that. Yeah. But I like to point it out to everybody to see. For one, it's a funny story, but for who tells everybody, oh, I'm going to open a mine in the hotel. No, you're not. You're not. I don't believe you, but you're not. And but to tell them that story, that I do know that it connected to the basement over across the street there. In those buildings, they actually, during Prohibition, they were down there bootlegging and moonshine. And actually there was a little girl that came down and saw these guys that were bootlegging, and she was like 5 or 7, and they killed her right there and put her in a shallow grave right there under that building. I mean, she was like 5, 7 years old. Didn't you give her mom $20 and said, your little girl's a liar, keep her away from us? Yeah. You know? I mean, why do you have to, I think they rocked her to death. It's something horrible, like horrible, cruel, you know, like, I guess if you were doing illegal things, but Jesus Christ, I mean, couldn't you pay your mother to shut that child up and keep her away from us? Yeah, I think so, but yeah, it was pretty sad little story. And then they buried her in a shallow grave, so then she just went missing apparently, and I mean, oh my God, how horrible, you know. This room in here, we did get quite a bit of activity in. Okay. Let's put it on this side. quite often they'll tell you but it's pretty good. Okay. So, this is a good location. Back, what is this? Goldfield Hotel. Yeah, this old sign. This back here is also closed off to everybody, but that used to be a well back there. There's actually a waterway that runs fairly close to the surface right under the hotel also. Okay. So all of that energy moving about, plus also the flooding in the basement sometimes is because it seeps up from that underground waterway too. So all of these things are factors for this basement. You know, if you do things just right, you can walk on the walls too. I literally have had people ask me, they walk on the walls? Like, seriously, you're kidding, right? No, yeah. I've had people honestly believe that
I'm going to set one up in here. This is a hot spot.
At this point, I am going to leave you guys alone. You're going to lock me out, so that you know nobody else can get in here. This lock, though, if you notice I didn't, like, halfway, don't force it all the way over, not all the way. This will be hell to undo, and you'll be like, I can't unlock it, we're stuck in here now. And I'll be like, dude, you gotta unlock the door. Just kind of halfway, it keeps everybody from coming in and making noise. Okay, what else? I told you everything else about bathrooms and everything like that. And, yeah, I think I've covered everything.
Together we are Paranormal Trilogy, a team with different abilities from Reno, Nevada. This is Phasmo Network.